Financial security refers to the peace of mind experienced when we aren't worried about money. Often, this results from having enough income to cover expenses, being debt-free, or having savings to cover emergencies. We'll talk about the connection between financial security and safety on this episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast.
From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Safety at work is more than freedom from physical injury. To be safe, you have to feel safe. Join us each week as we discuss psychologically healthy and safe work in the USA.
Well, welcome to this week's Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. Today's episode is probably a little bit different than many of you who follow the podcast would actually be expecting. However, the topic we're going to talk about today, at least in my view, is actually very important. One of the factors that I believe influences the decisions that people make around their employment, around their recreation, even around their lives, is their financial condition. And I have to admit, so I was, born in some fairly humble beginnings. My mom was a teenager when I was born, and we were on public assistance the vast majority of my life. Matter of fact, until I graduated high school. And so this whole conversation about money and what you do with it and all that, it's something I've learned over my lifetime because there was nobody at home to teach me how to open up a checking account or how to pay my bills or any of that kind of stuff. And so I did what a lot of folks do. You go out and you figure it out. And so some of the decisions that I made turned out okay and some not so much. But again, as I think about particularly what goes on in the workplace, again, because we focus a lot on that arena in this podcast, there are a lot of people, again, today that are working in environments that are basically toxic. They endure microaggressive behavior and hazing and bullying and harassment and even violence in some cases. And their decision to speak up, ask for help, or especially seek another opportunity is directly tied to whether or not they can, meet their basic needs, get health care, get shelter, get food, those kinds of, again, basic necessities. And a lot of it is tied back to how they manage their resources. So this is not meant to be judgmental about where people are financially, but it's to have a conversation with somebody who knows what they're talking about, because I don't. I've learned some things, but I like to get folks who have expertise. And this is going to be one of those conversations. So today's guest is Jerel Harvey of Fedway Financial. And he's just the person to have this conversation about financial planning, financial literacy, and whatever other conversations we get into today. And so I always greet my guests with the same question. And Jerel, to you, so who is Jerel Harvey?
Thank you, David. So who is Jerel Harvey? That's a great question. So professionally, Jerel is a business owner. He's a financial advisor and an educator. But outside of work, I'm also very civically engaged in a number of organizations that focus on promoting social and economic mobility. And then at home, I'm just a husband, and I'm a father to a 6-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son.
Right. Wow. All of the things that, that we hear about in the storybooks, so business owner and active in the community and, a husband and a dad, that's got to be very cool. That'd be very cool. So tell me a little bit about when you hear the term psychological health and safety, what do you think that means? What does that mean to you when you hear that?
Yeah. So for me, obviously I work in wealth management. And so for me, I see psychological health and safety as more than just a number. I can remember some commercials back in the day that says, do you know your number? But it's really more than just a number. for me, it's really about experiencing the lifestyle, retirement, or legacy that you envision. And be honest, David, it's almost somewhat of an oxymoron that allows you to feel secure, at the same time, feel free. And so many times you hear these different terms such as, I want financial security, I want financial freedom, I want financial independence. And so all of those things are really about having psychological safety and health. And so that is kind of what it really boils down to. And so having a plan about how to create that environment and create those things is really important.
Wow. Yeah, that's taking me exactly where I want to go with this topic, because again, as we shared a little bit off there, I really believe they're connected. I mean, you can look at virtually every metric out there. I was reading a little bit about the impact of the pandemic and how it didn't affect everybody the same. The folks who were more financially stable, who had more resources available to them, many of them, first of all, they didn't get exposed because they could stay at home. I mean, they had people deliver things to their doorstep, as opposed to those who, because of their financial situation, in many cases, had to, get up and go to work and had to go out and expose themselves. And so there wasn't this equal kind of, impact of even the pandemic. And I don't think just life in general is the same for both groups. So share a little bit with me about how you ended up kind of in the work. So were your parents involved in financial stuff? How did you end up doing financial advising? How's that happen?
Yeah. So again, another great question. I actually didn't come from a family who was in financial services or wealth management. Actually, my father was in the military, and so he served 26 years in the Air Force.
Wow.
And my mother was an elementary school teacher. But with that said, I do want to say that my journey into finance did really start with my environment and my upbringing. And so I grew up right outside the Washington, D.C. area. And so when I was growing up, kind of like seeing some of the wealth disparities in my community really drew me to finance. And so you can go down one block and you can see power and wealth. And then you could just go over a couple of other blocks and you can see a lot of poverty. And it was that contrast that really got me interested in finance, kind of say, how can we close this wealth gap? And what are the things that some people are doing or know that others maybe not be doing? And so that kind of put me on a mission to learn more about financial management and investing. And so I did my undergraduate degree in finance. Later on, went and got my MBA with a focus on finance and entrepreneurship. And then over my career, I've had the opportunity to work in a lot of different areas of finance. And so industry finance, wealth management, lending. And so all those experiences that gave me a wide breadth of knowledge about finance. But I would say the part that gives me the most passion, the most enjoyment is really financial planning and financial education.
Wow. So you figured this out fairly early. I know there are a lot of folks who go to higher education, some of them with accumulating huge sums of debt to do it, but then they'll go and get their education in something and then practice or do something totally different. So it sounds like, you've kind of been focused on this for a while. Now, I know you have your own firm now, but I just understand that you've been involved in some bigger firms, don't necessarily need. So what's the difference between working at one of the big boys, so to speak, and having your own business?
Yeah, so I've had the opportunity to work for the two largest wealth management firms in the world. And those were very, very valuable experiences. And I learned a lot at both places. And I had the opportunity to work with some awesome people. And some of them people that I still kind of keep in contact today and who are really good friends. In those two places, they allowed me to really work in my profession, but they didn't allow me to work in my purpose. And so those environments controlled and dictated what I do. And I learned to be, at what I did. And I learned what I saw was that you can be good at what you do, or you can even love what you do, but we're more than just what we do on the job from day to day. And when I talk about it didn't really allow me to almost like really reach my purpose, is because there was a cap on my potential at those two places. And to be honest, part of that cap was external, but some of that cap was also internal for me. And so allowing me to kind of step out and start my own company really allowed me to really stretch myself and was able to allow me to kind of take off those constraints as well.
So when you say that some of the constraints were internal and external, are you talking about internal and external to the firms or internal and external to you or both?
Both.
Okay.
And so I will say that from external, I mean, there are, certain factors within the workplace that, again, that was going to limit or put a cap on my potential. But then at the same time, when you work in such a large company, there is the ability to kind of get comfortable and complacent. And I think that's the internal constraint, because when you kind of walk out, you can hand out your business card and say, hey, this is where I work at. And you can be very comfortable in that environment. And it looks very good on paper, but still have a certain level of emotional distress or a level of unfulfillment inside that that you can do more that's out there for you.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So one of the things that I do when guests come on the podcast, and it's an extension of my research, and I have folks go through this instrument that I call the psychosocial hazard inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And you had opportunity to see the inventory, and without going into more detail than you feel comfortable going into, is there anything that you saw there that either you've experienced or you've seen other people experience and you go like, wow, now that I see it, that really could have been handled differently?
Yeah.
Do you have one of those that pops to mind when you think about, kind of some of the terms and some of the hazards that you saw?
So yeah, definitely there are different times that come to mind. I mean, I would say that even, both organizations have been presented with certain lawsuits, especially around diversity. And so there are different challenges in that space. I would say there's also a different type of challenges around expectation and what you call goals and quotas. And so many times, those firms will put forth that we always have our clients' best interest in mind, which is really is part true, right? And so we always try to make sure that we are responsible with the client's money and things of that nature. But I've also seen the situations where there were certain expectations put upon workers where they was forced to make a judgment. Where do I lose my job, or do I put them in a product or a situation that can be a little bit more rewarding for me, but that's not always the best for the client? And so sometimes when you're put in tight situations where you have to make decisions like that, it creates a certain safety hazard for people, right? To say,
right,
I need to make sure I keep my job to hit these different goals and quotas and different things like that. Not only that, sometimes there's other firms, not necessarily so much at the ones that I was at, that also have different proprietary products that say, hey, push our products, even though there may be other different services or other different solutions out there that may be better. And so those sometimes can create a conflict for a person that works in wealth management.
Wow. Well, yeah. And again, having this conversation is just so, it's interesting because the very service you're trying to provide for others, you're affected by it at the same time,
right?
By the expectations of the, of the firm or of the environment that you're in, because, while you're trying to help other people, at least, in your mind, help other people manage their wealth, you have to think about yours,
right?
Based on the, wow, and I can't say that's something I necessarily thought about. So again, now, having, what to you is the biggest benefit of being able to, for lack of a better term, kind of call your own shots?
Yeah, I will say that the best benefit or the biggest benefit is really just you can kind of do business on your own terms. Obviously, there are certain compliance measures that you have to still follow. But at the same time, you can service the clients that you want to serve. You can kind of grow your business how you want to grow your business. And so, and you always feel, for me, is that I put my name behind my business. And so I'm always able to kind of stand behind it. And so I can also embed my own values, my own mission, my own community work, all those different things that make me unique. And then I can really create and hire the staff and the people that also have that same values and that same mission as me as well. And so, again, I think the biggest thing is the additional freedom that you have, but also, again, being able to be stretched in such a way that kind of go beyond and just being a financial advisor or a financial planner. I can almost bring my whole self to work and all the components that make me.
Right, right. Yeah, that's an important phrase that you just used there, that bringing your whole self, because that's really the definition of psychological safety, being able to bring your whole self to this endeavor, not have to be so concerned about the consequences or who's gonna, not like it or not like the way that you do what you do. Tell me a little bit about, so you're seeing over the course of your career, lots of folks in different financial situations. What, in your view, are some of the biggest misconceptions about even the concept of wealth management? What's some big misconceptions about that?
Yeah, so the one thing I would say that people will confuse, that many people believe that making more money is the answer to all their financial problems. And so earning more money does not necessarily make you better off financially. It may allow you to buy more expensive things. However, if you don't have healthy financial habits around saving, investing, and managing debt, you just get into a deeper cycle of financial frustration. And so I think that's a really big thing. Again, more money does not equal more security or financial independence. The second thing is kind of goes back to one of the things that you mentioned, David, earlier in the podcast, when you was talking about I didn't necessarily come from money, or I wasn't raised in an environment where my parents taught me about money. And there are many people like that. And many times that does have an influence or impact on your relationship with money, but still it's not the end all be all. And so we all can still educate ourselves in different ways to know how to be good stewards of our money and our finances. And then I'll say the last misconception or thing is that people may think that one financial decision ruins them. And so sometimes they can't get over a financial mistake that they made in the past. And I would say that, that is one of the things that you don't allow one mistake or one situation or a couple of years of bad financial management define who you are. I mean, those are valuable life experiences and life lessons, but you have to be able to plan ahead, because it's more important about how you plan ahead than how you failed in the past.
Wow. 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 I tend not to, do a lot of looking back, but there's some decisions that I've made over the course of my lifetime that, had I known that, I might have made a different one.
Sure,
And
sure.
I think it's that way for a lot of people, though.
No doubt.
And it's really neat to hear what you were saying about that one decision doesn't define you. I made a financial decision a year out of high school that I thought was going to ruin me.
Mm-hmm.
I really did. And frankly, at the time, was just following the direction and guidance of the people around me who didn't know much more about it than I did. So It's kind of, that blind leading the blind concept where we both end up kind of falling in the ditch. And then had to find ways to kind of bring myself out of it over the course of time. Mm-hmm. So again, in terms of what is a financial plan in some simple terms for folks who, there's some probably folks who've tuned in are going like, they're talking about money on the podcast that talks about psychological safety. Yeah, we are. Because again, this has an impact on the rest of your world. I'm not sure how you separate the two, because a good percentage of what people pursue in terms of their education, who they have relationship with, where they work, the community that they live in or don't is driven by that goal to have their basic needs met. And in this society, you need money to do that. You really do. So talk a little bit about financial planning 101. Don't give away all of it because we want to connect people to you later.
Sure.
But financial planning 101, what does that mean? What does that look like?
So financial planning allows you to connect all the components of your financial life. And it acts as a roadmap to ensure that you're able to meet both your short and long-term goals. And so when I talk about connecting all your components, and so there's different parts. There's investments, there's insurance, there's college planning if you have children, there's estate planning when you pass away. There's so many different things. There's cash flow planning about how you manage your spending. There's debt management. All those different components make up our financial life. And so what a financial plan does, it allows you to connect each one of those pieces. And so that they're not operating in silos, but they all are connected in such a way that, again, allows you to go back to accomplish or achieve whatever goals that you have. And so there are some studies out there that shows that 72% of families do not actually have a written financial. And so in other words, that means that only 28% do have a written financial plan. Why is that important? The reason why that is important is because there's also other studies that show that people that have a financial plan are 2.5 times more likely to be able to save enough for retirement. And so that's a big thing, because when you talk about like retirement, that allows you to have control over your future. And being, again, having control and freedom and independence is very important for a lot of people when you're thinking about and talking about safety. But the other thing is that it allows you to have the ability, because there's, once you get to your quote unquote retirement years, there are some people who do choose to continue to work and continue to do things because they enjoy what they do, or they want to do other different things or have a second career at, and that's totally fine. But then there's other people out there who have to continue to work beyond when they want to work because they have no other option. And so that's a different situation. So when you don't have any other options and you have to work to kind of meet your lifestyle and meet your needs, that's become a situation that's not healthy.
Hi listeners, Jason here. We hope you're enjoying this latest podcast episode. Now, if you're like Joelle, Alicia and myself and enjoy learning from the best, then the Flourish DX Academy is for you. The Academy includes free e-learning courses on the ISO 45003 standard for psychological health and safety at work, and associated topics such as how to conduct a psychosocial risk assessment and how to create the business case for psych health and safety. All courses feature high-quality videos, downloadable resources, multi-choice questions, and a downloadable training certificate on completion. Take your learning to the next level with all Flourish DX Academy courses included within the Flourish DX mobile app. Select podcast episodes from the Psych Health and Safety podcast and sister podcasts from Canada and the USA are also included. Get started with Flourish DX for free at www.flourishdx.com/get-started. That's www.flourishdx.com/get-started. Now back to this episode.
So, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I'm not sure if if there's more to add to it, but is there? I think some people believe, this is my, again, coming out of the community that came out of, I think some people believe that financial planning is only for people who already have money. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is an assumption. That is a very good assumption. That is an assumption that people have, but that's not incorrect. But that's not correct, I should say. Financial plan is for people at all levels, right? And so financial plan is important for the person that just came out of undergrad, who has, their first job, that's trying to think about how they plan, how they manage the student loan debt. How do they start preparing to purchase a home? How do they kind of put themselves in position for marriage down the road? So financial plan is not just for people who have money. It's important for every stage of life, no matter where you're at. And so it's important for the person that's that midlife career. And it's also definitely important for the persons at the end of their career. And so it's important no matter if, again, you're wealthy or if, again, you're just trying to get by. Because if you're trying to get by, a financial plan will hopefully allow you to put the certain things in place, the certain discipline, the certain guardrails to allow you to have a little bit more freedom so that you're not living or working check to check.
So you mentioned early on that you have a 6 and a 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't mind sharing, when do you start talking to children about financial management?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I would say it really starts early. I think some of the formal education may start a little later, more, closer to 10, 12. But I think the other components, you're really starting to talk about managing money, as soon as they can almost start counting in certain ways. I mean, it may not be, directly about, stocks and bonds and things like that, but you're talking about, when they go into the store about this is how much money you have. If you buy this, you won't have any more money left over. Again, that's financial management. Talking about when, again, for Christmas, what things do you want? Those are financial management components. And so I think it's just about introducing them to different ways that they can find engaging. I mean, you could even, I think about like different industries that are now exposing children younger and younger to like STEM, they think about like, and so you can start teaching children, very early about different components about money management, budgeting, saving, those different things can really start at an early age.
Right. Because the earlier they start, they just become natural, they becomes just the way they do it, because we are all the product of the environments that we were raised in. And again, I like so much what you said earlier about, one decision not having to define you. I mean, my family, we weren't in the military, but we moved around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When I was, by the time I graduated high school, I think we lived in a dozen places. And come to find out as I got older, a lot of that had to do with the financial situation of a mom with,
Right.
5 or 6 or 7 children trying to manage all that.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of, value judging and all that all that type of thing that people do but that's life. There are people in those circumstances, and even us as a society, if we simply, compare and judge and try to fix and, and critique what's going on with people and don't provide any different information, we as a society end up having to address it, because a lot of the folks who are in the correctional system right now are there because they're trying to meet their basic needs. And the only option they thought in front of them was to take from someone else.
Yeah. And David, to that point, I think the other thing when I think about like how we teach our children, I think one of the best teachers is really modeling the behavior that you want from a financial standpoint. And so, and when I even think about like my situation growing up, again, we talked about that a little earlier, but what I did see, we didn't necessarily have financial conversations about different investments and different things in my household. But what I did see, I saw my parents model good financial behavior. And so they were very good stewards, of their money. I mean, I sometimes saw my mother cutting out coupons. I sometimes saw my mother doing other different things. And even though they didn't earn a lot, we always felt like we had more than enough. We always felt like we lived in a certain level of, I didn't really experience a lot. But when I kind of got older, I was like, okay, how much did y'all make? On the teacher salary, on this, and you had 3, you was doing these different things. It was because they were really good stewards of their money, and they was able to manage those different things. And so I was able to kind of see that behavior. And I think that's one of the things that even for our children, they're watching everything that we do. And so they see how we manage different things, and that can also have an impact.
Yeah, I similar experience. Again, it was just my mom, but I never really realized that we didn't have a lot until I started comparing this to other people.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't really feel until, and a lot of it had to do, you go to school and one
Yeah.
kid says, I got this, and you don't have that. And I guess I'm going, oh, really?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
at home, I felt like our needs were met. I mean, we always had a place to stay, even though we moved a bit, we
Yeah.
always had a place to stay. Some of some of the older folks who are kind of around, because again, having a mom that's not much older than you get the advantage of almost growing up with her. And a lot of the
Yeah.
folks that were around her would say, oh yeah, she was young, but her kids were always clean and she kept them all together and all that type. So we kind of bucked the perception about folks who don't have a lot. But in our house, we didn't really know that we didn't until somebody else said it, I think it's really important to, as you said, this importance of modeling this behavior as opposed to, sometimes the kids won't get it, but they do. They actually do. Yeah. So again, you start your own firm. Did you have a particular type of client, or, you talked about your, family being in the military. Do you have a particular type of client that comes to Fedway that works with you?
Yeah. So, more recently, when I've kind of started Fairway, I have started to lean in a little bit more to government employees, federal employees, state employees. And that really brings me a lot of interest because it allows me to almost serve those who serve, right? And so there's a lot of value and satisfaction with that. As I mentioned, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, so I naturally have a lot of family and friends who came through the government, who worked in the government. And so there's a lot of different things to be taught and to be learned workplace benefits. A lot of people just think, at a certain time of the year, I got to look at my benefits, but it's more to that. Like, how do you take those components and then also add them or infuse them into your overall financial plan, your health insurance, your 401k plan or TSP or 457, whatever you have on your workplace? How do you take those different things, any kind of life insurance, and then kind of infuse them into, again, your total financial plan with other facets that may be totally outside of the workplace? And so I think that's where I really enjoy be able to kind of bring together and bridge those two areas with workplace benefits, as well with the other different things that make up your personal financial planning.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's just amazing having a conversation like this, because I think about all the years that, basically sometime in the fall, somebody from HR drops a pamphlet off and says, you got to look in there and look up your benefits. And, I was in the fire rescue service. Sometimes we sit around the fire station. Oh, what do you think? Oh, I got this. We're kind of trying to advise each other. None of us really know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But that's the way most folks do it. And it goes back to that, that statement I made earlier, that folks think that financial planning is for those rich people. Yeah. And, you're hopefully people are catching the word. This is really for everyone who wants to manage the resources they have available to them a little bit better.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's for the blue collar and for the white collar. It's for both people, because it's extremely important. Because again, when you also not just thinking about certain government benefits, I mean, there's a little level of complexity that comes around with them. There's certain rules and stipulations. Again, when you kind of start messing with the government, they want to put a lot of rules and stipulations around certain things. And so understanding how your pension may work and how you get paid from that standpoint, all those different things are extremely important to your overall, again, financial well-being and how those things impact your life.
Yeah. So there's another, another thought that comes to mind as you're talking. So financial security, we talked a lot about. So what does, and most of the folks that you talk to, or folks that you've interacted with or in your studies, so financial freedom feels like what?
So financial freedom feels very different for each person, but financial freedom at the end of the day, it means almost being able to live life on your own terms. And so not being able to be managed by money, but you are managing the money. And I think that's what the financial freedom and financial independence looks like, that you are able to manage your money in such a way that allows you to do the things that you want to do, allows you to achieve and go to places that you want to go, So to do those different things, I think that's what it comes down to.
Wow. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So there's at least in the society that I've hung out in, there tends to be again this hyper focus on, particularly on the get rich quick and get yourself a stock that's going to make you a bunch of money, or it's always about getting more. Can you kind of help folks think about a little bit more of the balance? So not just the investing and making more money, because it was really interesting what you said earlier, that making more money doesn't necessarily make you more secure. So can you talk a little bit more about that whole balance, in terms of how you manage your resources?
Yeah, I mean, managing the resource, I mean, it's extremely important. And there's a balance between everything. Many times in the financial world, we talk about the balance between risk and reward. Right. And so many times if you take more risk, there's going to be a bigger reward. But at the same time, when you take more, there's a larger side for the downside loss. And so there is a balance between everything. There's a balance between how you spend and what you save. And so there's always a unique balance. The other thing that I want to say and point out is that money is a very emotional topic for people. And so many people have both positive and negative experiences about money and dealing with money that they have, endured over the course of their life. And so sometimes those different life experiences, they cause you to have certain expectations and biases, again, whether they're a positive or a negative in such a way. And so my job is to really help my clients not only manage their money, but also manage their expectations around money and manage their emotions. And so again, we're talking about like the stock market. You can see it go up one day, you can see it go down one day. You can be in an economy that is expanding, or you can be in an economy that's shrinking. And so no matter what's going on, again, around the external forces, my job is to help clients manage their emotions and manage their money throughout those periods. And so I think that is the real important aspect for me. And so what I do as a financial advisor, no matter, again, what the economy or what the market is doing, I always try to focus the conversation on specific needs, goals, and objectives, and allow those different things drive outcomes. And so that's what the important thing is that, again, for any kind of client, it's always kind of bring yourself back to, what do I need? What do I want to achieve? And what are my objectives around that? And so when you kind of think about, from my financial kind of like a financial safety standpoint, when you tend to be more emotional, you tend to make more irrational decisions. And so being able to be objective from a financial planner standpoint allows me to help my clients take some of that irrational behavior away.
Wow. Yeah, that's wow, that's just so important. And again, when you're saying this, it's really just so simple, but you bring up a really interesting point about sometimes the emotions connected around money. And again, let's connect this back to the workplace. There are decisions that get made in the workplace around that job. I want that promotion. I don't really think about the promotion itself. And I particularly see this around folks who want promotion into positions to lead other people, when honestly, what I want is the money. I don't really want the responsibility that goes around with leading the people. So I get the money, but then I absolutely despise the fact that I'm not responsible for a bunch of other people.
Right.
And that creates this tension. So now I've got the money. I certainly don't want to lose it, but I don't really like these people that I'm working with. So it's just a really interesting kind of set of tension for people that goes back to your emotions, ultimately around money.
Yeah.
Because there are those that really enjoy other people. They do. They just enjoy. They're very social. They love helping others. They're just very comfortable that way. And then others, there are some people who shouldn't supervise anybody. That's just not their thing. They're very good at sitting at a desk or doing a process, but interacting with other people sometimes a challenge for them. But again, their relationship to money drives them to do some of those kinds of things. Wow. I just,
Yeah.
so, so what's your outlook and view for, for your business? And, are you trying to become one of the big boys, or you trying to, do you feel fairly secure in the space that you're in? How's this being a business owner thing working for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely have goals to grow my company. And so I mean, I look at again, kind of look at my whole potential, and it's just I think the wealth management company is just one piece of it, of overall what things that I want to be able to accomplish. For again, I mentioned that one of the joys that I have is financial education. And so one of the things that I want to do is be able to expand my influence and impact by using different platforms, whether they're digital or in person, to continue to educate people around financial resources, being able to provide different workplace education around those benefits, kind of tying back to that. And so being able to go into some of these government agencies and be able to provide the education and the resources, I think that's the next pivot or iteration that will also go along with the individual that I serve within my practice. And then there's also other different things that I'm looking to just continue to expand my service offerings. And so I've been able to collaborate and team up with some other organizations that's going to allow me to offer even more, to not just be able to manage just the asset side of my clients' financial world, but also look at that that liability side, being able to offer certain lending products as well. So if you need a home mortgage, that I'm able to still be able to support you with that. And so there's different things that I'm also adding to the toolkit for myself and for the organization to provide a wider set of offerings for my clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if in the few minutes we have left, so if there are folks out there who want to find you, who want to talk to you, because I understand you do some things out on YouTube and other things of that nature as well. So share a little bit about how people can find you and get connected with you if they so choose.
Absolutely. So people could definitely connect with us through our website. That's www.fedwayfinancial.com. You also mentioned the YouTube page. And so we are on YouTube. And so we have our station, what we call the Money Briefing. And so weekly, we bring out new episodes to talk about different aspects of personal finance, federal benefits, and retirement planning on that. And so again, that's the Money Briefing. And then I'm always open to connect with people through LinkedIn. And so you can send me a request. I like to expand my professional network that way as well.
Wow. Absolutely. Wow. I just, this is just really cool. I mean, as I said, and again, for a little bit more disclosure on my part, my whole relationship with money has evolved over the course of my life, because I did have some of those rather traumatic experiences coming up. Mm-hmm. But at this stage in my life, it's just good to be able to feel, not so much pressure and all that type of thing. And some of this relates to decisions that I made 8 or 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. That said that, if I can get some control over my own, and in my case, it was management of debt. Mm-hmm. And, because if, what I figured out is if you don't owe a bunch of people, you don't need to make as much. You need to, seriously, because your needs are kind of met that way. But this is just such a healthy kind of conversation. And I'm hopeful that folks, again, who are just kind of popping in will go like, maybe that's what's going on. Maybe what I'm experiencing at work is really not about the work. It's really more about me. Mm-hmm. Maybe, the types of, things that I'm allowing, to happen to me, it's really about my relationship with money. And if I could get that fixed, like I said, I've found, particularly over the last couple of years, that it is a lot easier to be able to, frankly, go to a supervisor or a client or whoever and say, I'm not really interested in doing that any longer because I don't have to do that. I have a standard for myself and I don't really have to do that thing. And there's that freedom that says, I can just kind of walk away from that, or sometimes even walk away from that job if it's not healthy for me physically, emotionally. And I just think this is such an important topic. And so, any parting thoughts that you want to leave for the folks who've listened in today, just about, whatever you want to share, with the folks who've been listening.
Well, David, I appreciate so much for offering me this platform. I've enjoyed it so much. And I would just say, again, going back to that point that you made, that financial planning, financial management is important for everybody. Again, no matter what stage of your life you are in, no matter what your background is, take steps today to make your future better. And so by doing, a financial plan and looking at just all aspects of your financial life would definitely help you in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. Well, Jerel, thanks so much for joining us. And for those who stumbled in, this is your first episode. We don't generally talk money here, but we've been talking about it today. But each week we try to get folks in this space to bring their lived experience, to bring their research and expertise around not only psychosocial hazards and psychosocial hazard mitigation, but the things that you can do to help yourself be more resilient in the world that we live in. We can't change the entire world, but we can certainly work on changing ourselves, and changing and managing our relationship with our financial resources is certainly part of that. So certainly you can follow this podcast, psychhealthandsafetyusa.com. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn. And certainly I'm always happy to share with those of you. We're getting to the point, and we are likely there. We are right around 1,000 folks that have chosen to subscribe to the podcast. So if you're listening today and you haven't subscribed, push that subscribe button. If you want to watch us on YouTube, go ahead, watch us on YouTube. I'm not certain that we're going to become big time influencers, but I'm hoping that we're having conversations that are helping people deal with just being a human being and giving them information that's going to help them have a better life. So again, thanks very much, Jerel Harvey from Fedway Finance. Glad to have you today. And for all of those who have listened in to this episode, check us out next time at the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. To stay up to date with the best content on workplace mental health in America, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and join the Flourish DX community at www.flourishdx.com.